but forget it. I forgive you, but my brothers and sisters, we must learn to forgive and to forget. It's very important. I will never forget how I was treated by such and such a person in such and such a place. I forgive them what they did, but I ain't gonna never forget what they did. We must forgive and forget. Erase it out of your mind. Let it go. It's very important. Because the only thing it's doing is making you bitter. It's destroying your inner self and your spiritual ability to communicate with God. Because every time you see that all this stuff comes up and it makes you angry, that you got to let it go. You must let it go. That's that's the second part of things that we must realize. If we harden our hearts, my brothers and sisters, for so long, we can print this memory indelibly upon our minds, and it becomes very harmful to us. It becomes very harmful to us. So we must forgive and forget. It has been said that to forgive is the sign of a great man, but to forget was sublime. Therefore, it's very important to remember that nothing but the cleansing spirit of Christ can take from these memories of our bitterness what someone has done and how we must forget. The third thing that is very important in this forgiveness and in this particular petition, we must learn to love. We must learn to love. Now, we've already seen that Christian love, what we call that agape love, is an unquenchable benevolence, that undefeatable goodwill, which will never seek anything but the highest good for others. No matter what they do to us, no matter how they treat us, and no matter what has happened in our life concerning them, we must have that agape love within our hearts, which again is a very important part of pleasing Yahweh our God. My brothers and sisters, we must love. And I know sometimes it's hard. And that type of love can only come to us through Christ. It can't be a human carnal type situation. It's only through the Spirit of God, it's only through Yahweh, it's only through Yeshua Christ that can give us that type of understanding and that type of love. So if he's in your heart, if he's part of your life, then it becomes easier for you to give that type of agape love. We must always remember to be forgiven, we must forgive. And that is a conclusion, or that is a condition of forgiveness, which only the power of Christ can enable us to fulfill. We must always remember to forgive, to forget, and to love. And if we do those three things, I don't care what my neighbor do to me. I can look at him and smile and say, I don't know what you're going through, brother, but I still love you. I'm still willing to try to understand what you're going through. I'm not going to treat you the way you treat me. And I truly believe it'll make a difference in how your neighbor reacts in the things that he's doing. Learn to forgive, to forget, and to love. Now, let's look at verse 13, because now we've already forgotten all those things that have been done to us in the past. And verse 13 says, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. My brothers and sisters, there are two matters of meaning at which we must look at before we begin to study this particular petition in detail. I discovered that today, in the 21st century, the word tempt, that word tempt, is always a hard word. It always means to seek, to deduce into evil. But in the Bible, the word piazorion is often better translated by the word test than by the word tempt. In the New Testament, usage to tempt a person is not so much to seek to deduce or seduce him into sin as it is to test his strength and loyalty and his ability for service. In the Old Testament, we read the story of how Yahweh tested the loyalty of Abraham by seeming to demand the sacrifice of his only son, Isaac. And in the Authorized Version, the story begins, and it came to pass that God did tempt Abraham, which is in Genesis 22. Now, something you must always remember, and it's obvious, the word tempt cannot mean here for Abraham to be seduced into sin. Because this is something that we know God can never do. So in reality, the word tempt is wrong being used in this situation. Because Yahweh was not tempting Abraham. He was testing Abraham. So that's why sometimes when the Greek translations get crossed up and these words can mean different things, and sometimes you see the wrong translation in the wrong place. And this is what we try to do, and this is what myself and I always try to teach you. And Sister Naomi and I, we get together and try to show you the difference between the different type translations. And once you know who Christ is, and you know who Yahweh is, and you know what he will and will not do, when you read the King James Version and it states the fact that Yahweh tempted Abraham, and we say, no, no, no. We know better than that. Because Yahweh does not tempt. So in other words, that should have been test instead of tempt. Now, once again, we're running out of time. But the origin of the power of Yahweh is not discussed in these matters. There are no speculations, so the Bible wastes no time in speculation about the origin of certain words. Look very closely when we start speaking about what Yahweh does and what Yahweh will not do. And once again, as I said before, we know he cannot and he will not tempt. So that next week we'll pick this up on this word of temptation, or we'll pick this verse 13 up